Welcome to a new video, and today I'm gonna talk about the father of the Blitzkrieg, or Heinz Guderian. If you enjoy my videos, please leave a like, and if you have any ideas for new videos, let me know in the comments down below. Heinz Wilhelm Guderian, as he was fully named, is considered by historians to be the mastermind behind the Blitzkrieg, which allowed the German army to achieve significant successes at the beginning of World War II and conquer large parts of Europe. Heinz Guderian was born on June 17, 1888, in Kulm, a small town in Poland that was then part of the Kingdom of Prussia. At a young age, Guderian enrolled as an officer candidate at the military academy in Metz, following in the footsteps of his father Friedrich, who was himself an officer in the Prussian army. In late January 1908, he graduated as a second lieutenant and served for some time in the infantry regiment where his father commanded as a major general. In 1912, he was sent to the military academy in Berlin, where he was promoted to lieutenant shortly after the outbreak of World War I. During the war, Guderian was deployed on the Western Front, where he participated in the battles of the Marne in fall of 1914, later in the Battle of Verdun. This earned him the Iron Cross First Class and a promotion to captain. The images of tanks wreaking death and destruction on the front lines left a lasting impression on him and would shape his future career. After the war, Guderian devoted all his free time to developing new tactics that emphasized the predominant role for armored units. Many senior officers dismissed Guderian's theories about the use of tanks on the battlefield as unrealistic. This hindered his career, and for a long time his promotion to major was delayed. He was finally promoted in 1927 and appointed lieutenant colonel in 1931. His career might have stagnated with his last promotion had it not been for his ideas about the use of tanks gaining attention when Adolf Hitler came to power in 1933. That same year he was promoted to colonel, following by his appointment as major general in 1936. The following year, Guderian published his ideas in more than a 200-page book titled Achtung Panzer, in which he elaborated on the key role of armored units in combination with infantry and air support in modern mechanized warfare, simultaneously introducing the concept of Blitzkrieg. During August 1939, Guderian took command of the newly formed 19th Army Corps. At short notice, he was ordered to spearhead the northern element of the invasion of Poland, which began on September 1st. Under his corps command was one of Germany's 6 panzer divisions. Guderian's corps controlled 14.5% of Germany's armored fighting vehicles. His task was to advance through the former West Prussian territory, which included his birthplace of Kulm, then travel through East Prussia before heading south towards Warsaw. Guderian used the German concept of leading forward, which required the commanders to move to the battlefront and assess the situation. He made use of modern communication systems by traveling in a radio-equipped command vehicle which kept him in contact with his corps command. By the 5th of September, 19th Corps linked up with the force advancing west from East Prussia. Guderian had accomplished his first operational victory and gave a tour of the battlefield to Hitler and Heinrich Himmler. The next day, he shifted his corps across East Prussia to participate in the advance on Warsaw. On the 9th of September, his corps was reinforced by the 10th Panzer Division and continued deeper into Poland, finishing at Brest-Litovsk. In 10 days, Guderian's 19th Corps advanced 330 kilometers, at times against strong resistance. The tank had proven itself to be a powerful weapon, with only 8 destroyed out of 350 deployed. On the 16th of September, Guderian launched an attack on Brest-Litovsk. The next day, the Soviet Union invaded Poland. He issued an ultimatum to the city: surrender to the Germans or Soviets. The garrison capitulated to the Germans. The Soviet Union's entry into the war shattered Polish morale, and Polish forces began to surrender in masses to Guderian's troops. At the conclusion of the campaign, Guderian was awarded the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross. The historian Russell Hart writes that Guderian supported the invasion because he despised the Catholic Slavic Poles who now occupied parts of his native beloved Prussia. During the invasion, the German military mistreated and killed prisoners of war, ignoring both the Geneva Convention and their own army regulations. Guderian's corps withdrew before the SS began its ethnic cleansing campaign. He learned of the murder operation and of Jews being forced into Nazi ghettos from his son, Heinz Guderian, who had witnessed some of them. There is no record of his having made any protest. Guderian was involved in the strategic debates that preceded the invasion of France and the Low Countries. The plan was being developed by his classmate at the 1907 War Academy, Erich von Manstein. The Manstein plan shifted the weight of the armored formations away from the head-on attack through the Low Countries to one through the Ardennes. Guderian confidently proclaimed the feasibility of taking armor through the hilly Ardennes forest and was subsequently told that he may have to command the spirit of the attack himself. He then complained about the lack of resources until he was given 7 mechanized divisions with which to accomplish the task. The plan established a force for the penetration of the forest that comprised the largest concentration of Germany's armor at that date, 1,112 out of Germany's total of 2,438 tanks. Guderian's corps spearheaded the drive through the Ardennes and over the Meuse River. He led the attack that broke the French line at the Battle of Sedan. Guderian's Panzergruppe led the race to the sea, ending the British Expeditionary Force (BEF) and French forces trapped at Dunkirk. The British counterattack at Arras on May 21st slowed down the German advances and allowed the BEF to establish defenses around the points of evacuation. While Hitler, conscious of potential reverses and allowing unsupported armor into urban fighting, issued the order to halt. A general resumption of the attack was ordered on May 26th, but at that time the Allied forces rallied, offering stiff resistance. On May 28, with losses mounting, Guderian advised abandonment of armored assault in favor of a traditional artillery infantry operation. Guderian was then ordered to advance to the Swiss border. The offensive started at the Wegnan line on June 9th and finished on June 17th with the encirclement of the Maginot Line defenses and the remaining French forces. Despite the successes of the invasion, French defeat was not inevitable. The French had better, more numerous military equipment and were not overwhelmed by a numerically or technologically superior military force. Instead, the French loss stemmed from a poor army morale, faulty military strategy, and a lack of coordination among their allied troops. Hitler and his generals became overconfident after their historic victory and came to the belief that they could defeat the Soviet Union, a country with significantly more natural resources, manpower, and industrial capability. In Guderian's 1937 book Achtung Panzer, he wrote that the time had passed when the Russians had no instinct for technology, and that Germany would have to reckon with the Eastern question in a form more serious than ever before in history. However, during the planning for Operation Barbarossa, the German invasion of the Soviet Union, he had become optimistic about the supposed superiority of the German arms. By May 1941, Guderian had accepted Hitler's official position that Operation Barbarossa was a preemptive strike. Guderian's 2nd Panzer Group began its offensive on June 22nd by crossing the Bug River and advancing towards the Dnieper. The combination of force of the 2nd and 3rd Panzer Groups closed the Minsk pocket, taking 300,000 prisoners before attacking towards Smolensk. Guderian was awarded the Knight's Cross with oak leaves on July 17, 1941. Following the conclusion of the Battle of Smolensk, which ended the encirclement and destruction of the Soviet 16th, 19th and 20th armies, General Franz Halder, Chief of Staff of the OKH, argued in favor of the all-out drive towards Moscow. Halder had Guderian fly to the Führer's headquarters to argue the army's case for continuing the assault against Moscow. Guderian, who had just recently been vehemently opposed to Hitler's plan for the drive to the south, unexpectedly sided with the dictator. This abrupt change of heart angered both Halder and Field Marshal Feder van Bock, commander of Army Group Center, and turned Guderian into somewhat of a Pyra amid army leaders. By September 15, German forces, including the 1st and 2nd Panzer Groups, had completed the largest encirclement in history, the Battle of Kiev. Owing to the 2nd Panzer Group's southwards turn during the battle, the Wehrmacht destroyed the entire southwestern front east of Kiev, inflicting over 600,000 losses on the Red Army by September 26th. However, the campaign had been costly. The German force had just half of the tanks they had 3 months earlier. They bogged down in a war of attrition, for which the Wehrmacht was not prepared. Guderian's 2nd Panzer Group was in the worst shape. It had just 21% of its tanks in working order. In mid-September, he was ordered to make a drive for Moscow. On the 30th of September 1941, the Battle of Moscow began. On the 4th of October, the 4th Panzer Division, part of the 2nd Panzer Group, suffered a severe setback at Metesk, near Orval. Guderian demanded an inquiry into the realities of tank warfare on the Eastern Front, eventually suggesting in November to its senior German tank designer and manufacturers that the quickest solution was to produce a direct copy of the Soviet T-34 tank. By November, the attacks by the 2nd Panzer Group on Tula and Karshira, 125 kilometers south of Moscow, achieved limited successes, while Guderian facilitated between despair and optimism, depending on the situation at the front. Facing pressure from the German High Command, Field Marshal Gunther von Kluge finally committed the weaker southern flank of his Fourth Army to the attack on December 1st. In the aftermath of the battle, Guderian blamed the slow committed Fourth Army to the attack for the German failure to reach Moscow. This assessment grossly overestimated the capabilities of Kluge's remaining forces. It also failed to appreciate the reality that Moscow was a metropolis that German forces lacked the numbers either to encircle or capture in a frontal assault. In the aftermath of the German failure, Guderian refused to pass on Hitler's stand-fast order and fell out with Kluge, the new commander of Army Group Center. Guderian was relieved of command on December 25th. For all divisions within Guderian's Panzer Group where files are preserved, there is evidence of illegal reprisals against the civilian population. In his memoirs, Guderian denied having given the commissar order. However, General Joachim Lemsen, a corps commander within Guderian's Panzer Group, is documented as saying prisoners who could be shown to have been commissars had to be immediately taken aside and shot, and that order came directly from Guderian. Reporting to the OKW, Guderian is documented as saying his Panzer Group had shunted off 170 commissars by the beginning of August. 2 years later, Hitler appointed him Inspector General of Armored Troops, and in July 1944, after the failure of Operation Valkyrie, he was appointed the Chief Staff of the Oberkommando des Heeres. In this position, Guderian had command over all Wehrmacht ground forces on the Russian front. However, he had little control over the course of the fighting on the Eastern Front, as Hitler ultimately made all the final decisions. In March 1945, after a heated dispute over the precarious situation of the German troops on various fronts, Hitler relieved him of his command and placed him in inactive status. Shortly thereafter, in May 1945, he was taken prisoner by the Americans. After his release from captivity, Guderian set about writing his memoirs, which were published in 1951 under the title Erinnerungen eines Soldaten, Memoirs of a Soldier. Shortly before his death, on May 14, 1954, he was working as an advisor in drawing up plans for a new German army, the future Bundeswehr, where his eldest son, Heinz Guderian, would also rise to the rank of general in the late 1960s. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, and hope to see you in the next video.